With both Ayaka and Shenhe rerunning soon, I can assume a lot more people will be playing this team for the first time. And one thing I think I can help with is teaching you how flexible the team's rotations and setups are. Some people might not have Kokomi, so they will use Mona, but it works similarly. So let's start. This is an example of a full sustained setup rotation. This is a rotation you would follow to use everything optimally. However, something you'll notice from playing is that it takes really long to get to Ayaka's burst, and sometimes in practice that can be annoying. It's about 9 to 10 seconds, and if you're using Mona instead of Kokomi, Mona has quite longer animations, so it's even longer. And in fact, sometimes it takes so long that enemies like PMA might be flying away before I even get to do Ayaka's burst. And also a lot of this setup is kind of overkill. Depending on how old your account is, your setup might be taking longer than it actually takes to defeat an enemy. So here's the first things you can think about cutting out. Firstly, Ayaka's skill. It's mostly used this early for energy, which is nice, but it's not actually mandatory to do right at this moment. You can use her skill later, which means you can get to her burst faster. The other one is that you don't actually need to use both Kazuha's burst and skill here. Just by doing one of them, you'll get his buffs. So cutting these things out, you can see we already reach Ayaka's burst quite faster now. So as I said, you can use either his burst or skill. It doesn't really matter unless you need the grouping. This is a freeze team where sure, his burst is definitely free damage, but it's nothing crazy. There's no overload or aggravate reactions here. And if you look, my Kazuha is a decent build, probably similar to many of yours. And as I just mentioned, this isn't a team where Kazuha's burst is mandatory for the team to function. Like maybe in a vape team where you need his pyro or hydro infusion to vape properly with the team. His role in freeze is mostly for grouping and buffing damage. So whilst using his full setup is free damage, if you don't have the energy for his burst, then don't worry about it. But we're not finished yet. You can go even faster than this. See, if you don't mind Ayaka's burst being slightly weaker, if you don't mind losing this 18% cryo damage from her talent, and also the last stack of the Mistsplitter passive if you're using that weapon, then you actually don't need to do her dash and normal attack. You can just skip to using her burst right away. Again, don't use this if you need all the damage you can get, but for a lot of enemies and a lot of accounts, it might not be that much of a difference. And besides, you can use some of her attacks after her burst. This just helps get to it faster. A secret strategy is that this also has some quality of life. In some fights, and you may not notice this until you actually play the team a lot, but dashing with Ayaka can sometimes give you worse positioning. I'll show you some examples. There's been many instances where she was already perfectly placed to hit all the enemies if I use her burst right away, whereas things might mess up and the AoE might mess up if I dash. So even with that reduced theoretical damage by not dashing and normal attacking, this can sometimes be better overall. Now, as far as being able to optimize this even further, not really. Technically, some people don't always need to be using Shenhe's burst, but the buffs and debuffs it gives are really strong. It's also got a really smooth animation, and most Shenhe builds usually have enough energy that is quite often available. Hope you found this video helpful, and good luck on your pulls.